Thanks for tuning into the video. As you read from the title, today is going to be a major upgrade to a residential mower. This one is the Troy-built Mustang Z42, but this will apply to any of the Cub Cadets or the Craftsman mowers that are similar to this, and also could be used in other applications as well, depending on the frame of your equipment, if you have access or can gain access to it. So let me turn you around and I'll show you the items that we need today. We are going to be adding a oil reservoir to the Hydro Gear 2200 series transmissions on a zero turn. So let me turn you around. I have everything that we need to get this job done. There will be a parts description, so that way you don't have to go through the troubles that I went through trying to find these items, especially one particular item. So let me turn you around and I'll show you what I have. And like I said, there will be a parts list in the description of the video if you want to do this yourself. Let me turn you around. All right, so here we go. All you're going to need is an oil reservoir. You're going to need 4 good hose clamps. I recommend going to the parts store, talking to the counter people there. These are really thick, heavy duty ones. You're going to need hardware, nut, bolt, 2 washers. I actually just went to Rural King and picked those up. And then you're going to need these here. That is your part number. Cub Cadet MTD. It's going to be the same part number. I had to order these off Parts Tree. Reason being is the size, 9/16 thread with a 1/2 inch barb. And let me tell you, you cannot find anything similar at your parts house. Your Tractor Supplies, your Lowe's and stuff, because I was actually, in my head, I was going to go and try to find one of the brass fittings that are barbed or a inverted flare like that one. And you cannot find it in this combination. It does not exist. And then you are going to need, I bought 6 foot of hose. It's going to be too much, but I would rather have too much. And this is 1/2 inch inside diameter. And this is not hydraulic. Well, yeah, hydraulic. It's power steering hose is what it is. So it's designed for oil and it's designed for high pressure, which the high pressure part we're never going to need. And then you're going to need just some 20 W50 oil. So let's get this application going here and get this process going. And what I'm probably going to do, because there's not a lot of room in here to film, I'm probably going to do the steps and then show it after, because like I said, there's just not a lot of working room to begin with, let alone trying to get a camera in here. But the first step of the process is going to be removing that bolt right there and that panel so that it looks like this, and we can have access down there to the transmission fill plug. All right, so you're going to need a 13 millimeter with a long extension. That's going to remove your plate, and I suggest getting a bag and keeping all your hardware and stuff together. That way, if you ever have to undo all this, you still have all the original hardware. And then we are going to need a 1/4 inch Allen head to remove that drain. And I'll go ahead and reach over here and break this one loose. Okay, grab my magnet. on to the next step, which is going to be adding in the fittings. All right, so I'm trying to get you a better shot here. So right through this panel, you can see the top of the transmission where I took the drain out of. And then I did just regular engine oil, oiled up the threads and the gasket there. And we're going to do this all by hand. Okay, and it's going to look something like this. And I'll get the other one installed and then get the wrench out and we'll get those snugged up. All right, so you're going to look something like that. And over here. And you have to go from the underside and get your wrench in there, which is an 11/16 wrench. Shine a light. So you're going to look something like that. So now I just need to get the hose and hose clamp and start attaching the rubber hose to those fittings there. Okay, and here's what we're looking like after installing the hose. Grab a flashlight here. So the hose is attached now. You want to try to position your hose. I mean, it goes without saying, you want to position your hose to where it's easy to access if you need to. And here's the other one. And then use the natural curve of the hose from where it was spooled up from when you bought it. Use the natural curve of the hose to your favor. Okay, so now that we have the left hose hooked up and the right hose hooked up, now we have to find a location to mount it. And actually it's going to wind up being right there in that location. I did cut a little long on this one here because we're going to have to try to curve the hose without kinking it. That's the goal. We don't want to kink these hoses. So, and I'll show you basically what I'm mimicking here. So I kind of stole the idea here off of my commercial mower. Now it actually runs all the way back on the other side of the battery, and then they do this weird 90-degree fitting there, but I don't feel like we need to do that. So I actually just ordered 2 of those fittings. That's how I got the part number for the transmission. So let's find a location here to mount this. And like I said, it's going to wind up being over here. After I bought this, because like I said, I was just like, well, that's simple. It's just one, and it is an actual OEM reservoir. I wish I would have just went ahead and bought the 2 individual ones. There's little ones, because I would have just mounted one there and mounted one there. But we're too far now. So this will still definitely keep it simple where you have one reservoir. So actually thinking we're going to wind up mounting it somewhere in this location here. I want to be able to still access the starter and stuff like that. So let me mock that up, get some holes marked, and see where we need to be as far as location on mounting this. Okay, so here's what it looks like mounted. I did put a level on it and level it. And a tip, if you're modifying this particular mower, there's not a lot of room back there. I initially wanted to run it through this way, but there's no room back there. So unfortunately, that's what we're looking at right there, which still looks professional. And like I said, I did level it out, and we are clearing the oil, engine oil, and we are clearing the starter. So it's not going to be in the way if I have to perform maintenance. Now, sucky side of this is these transmissions are not serviceable, okay? So eventually, 2 years down the line, you know, I am going to have to remove them, flip them upside down, and drain them, because these do not have a drain, nor do they have a filter. Now, Hydro Gear's website, the new 2200s actually have a drain. No filter, but they do have a drain. And then obviously they have access up top there. So you'd be able to service those ones with basically just a drain and fill. These ones don't have that. So eventually I will have to pull these out and service the transmissions to get new fluid in them. But at least this way, my transmissions are not going to starve for oil. So now I have to connect these hoses and hose clamps, and I best just fill up the oil. So let me get that going here, and then I'll bring you back once I do the routing of these. And I want to try to make it look as clean as possible. Like I said, I want this to look OE, where when somebody comes up to it, they just don't even think anything of it. Or, you know, hey, this seriously came with, you know, Reservoir for your transmissions. That's what I'm after here. So OE or better. All right, I got the hose clamps all snugged up, and it's gonna look something like this. I used the closest one here to actually go to this side. And the reason why I did that was just to route this hose away from the motor. And then on my mower, I was just lucky that it had this hose clamp catcher thing, or whatever you want to call those. So I ran that way it stays off the engine, and then it runs over down. So that one runs over through that on the back side of the hose, and to this one over here. Got everything snugged down, so now we are at the point where we're going to add oil. And I'm just going to add just a little bit and let that set. And then I'm going to jack up the back, and we're going to start it up and, you know, run the hydros. Shouldn't really have to purge, but we're going to do it anyway, just to try to get any air bubbles, because there will be air bubbles in the lines, but there shouldn't be any air bubbles in the actual transmissions themselves. So let me get you set up on a tripod here, and we're going to start adding some oil. All right, so here we go. I'm just going to add the 10W50 to it, and like I said, we're only going to add just a little bit. There's air bubbles coming out of both the holes right now. And I don't want to go over that cold line, which I'm 1/4 inch underneath that line. So we are definitely in a safe. So I'm going to let this set for 10 minutes or so, and start working on getting the rear end of this jacked up so that I can hopefully purge any air out of the lines. I mean, it'll naturally do it, but I don't want to strain the transmissions by, if there is an air bubble that does so happen to get trapped. And like I said, I'm going to let it set for about 10 minutes. I'm going to work on a few other things while I let that set, and I'll get you a sneak peek in here on what's going on. You see that top one right there? Air bubble. So yeah, we're going to let that set. Hopefully some of the air bubbles will come out. If not, they will once we fire this up and cycle the transmissions a little bit. So it'll be a second for you. It's going to be about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, so here we are. I got it right now. It's just running. Starting to get more air bubbles out, just running. So we're going to just let that run for 5 minutes or so, just as it sets, and then I'm going to actually hop on it, and we're going to Okay, so here we are. Let it run for about 5 minutes. It's still producing air bubbles, but we're going to go ahead and hop on it, and we're just going to go back and forth. I believe the manual from Hydra here says like 6 or 7 times forward and in reverse. So we're going to do a couple series. We're going to start out with it just on idle and do it, and then we'll kind of ramp up the RPMs. Get the gist. We're just going to be going different RPMs, full throttle, half throttle, idle, go back multiple times. I'm going to keep doing this until hopefully I don't see any air bubbles. So I'll be back with you, and we'll cover why I'm doing this and everything. Okay, so there you have it. Everything is done. You do want to make sure that you do not fill that over the cold. That oil needs somewhere to go when it gets hot. And so you cannot fill these up all the way, because when this gets hot, it will actually rise and then drop down when it's cold. So I've got her set right there. I've got majority of the air bubbles out. It's been about 20 minutes of me going back and forth at different idles. So we're pretty much done. I already did an oil check, or a leak check, to make sure that it wasn't leaking or anything like that. So let's get into why I'm doing this. So why I'm doing this if you don't know and this is your first time watching this video, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, all that good stuff. But why I'm doing this, so I use this mower 80% of the time. A lot of the yards that I have running a business are smaller yards. This is the cheapest thing I could find, and you're going to say, well, why didn't you? I didn't have the money. Okay, third year in business. I was lucky I had enough money to buy a brand new mower to begin with. You do what you have to do till you can afford to do what you want to do. And in this case, I bought this because it was cheap. But at the same time, I'm trying to protect my investment. That's why I run nothing but the best oils. You know, I'm doing this. There's several upgrades that I'm going to be doing in the future. But I also buy and sell mowers. And my first mower that I had in my first year was a Toro time cutter. And the frame on that one did not give you access to the top of that transmission. So there was no way you could even add oil to it without dropping the thing or trying to get some kind of a right angle fitting to drop in there and go from underneath and pump it in. And I had the left side go bad. And well, it started to go bad. Come find out when I took it out to swap it, there was only about a teaspoon of oil in the thing, because eventually over time, these are sealed. That oil will eventually just kind of evaporate and just not be there no more. You don't have to have a leak to lose the oil. And I'm always on Facebook Market shopping. And whenever you see mowers of this scale on Marketplace, you'll see in there, and it's always, I don't know why, it is always the left side. Drop in the comments if you've seen the same thing. And I know what the problem is. It's ran out of oil. It's a 5-6-year-old mower that's been used continuously. And eventually it just don't have oil in it anymore. And there's actually been a few people that I've messaged about their equipment, trying to buy it or whatever. And then when I decide I'm good, I don't want to buy it, I'll actually message them and say, hey, try taking that out of there and filling that up with fluid. I guarantee you get a couple more years out of that thing. And I've actually had a few people reach back to me and say, hey man, appreciate it. It worked. I know it's just a Band-Aid, but hopefully I can get a couple more years out of it. And I actually have a customer of mine that's a friend of mine. He has a Cub Cadet, and he's dealing with the same thing. It's the left side. I gave him one of my hydros to install in his, but the brakes were different. All that sort of stuff. But he kind of put a Band-Aid on his, and I was telling him what I was doing with my mower. So hopefully this might be able to help him out if he decides to, do some kind of modification like this, or just upgrade to a better mower. But that's why I'm doing this. It's not really for performance. It's not going to make this thing go any faster or be any better. What it's going to do is it's going to give me a visual on how much oil is in these transmissions, so that I can add accordingly. Because when you don't know, you're just blind. 3 or 4 years later, half the oil is gone. Well, you're causing damage to them transmissions. And there's no way that it can cause damage to this transmission, because that reservoir, one, there's plenty of room in it for it to vent up. And the cap on that actually is kind of like a, I guess, one-way check valve. It will allow air to come out, but it will not allow air to go in. And like I said, eventually I still will have to drop these transmissions, flip them upside down, drain all the oil, add oil into them. And like I said, this is the first year in service. It just turned over 50 hours. I don't know what the recommendations on it is. I will probably 200 hours, I will probably pull these transmissions down, flip them, drain them, and when I do install them, I will probably go with AMSOIL, some kind of high-end brand, synthetic, obviously, and service those correctly. But at least now I feel a little bit better. I know they're full. I know I don't have to worry about them. I have a visual. I can see what's going on with them. So yeah. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, because I think I do pretty cool shit, but you know, you might not think so. But my next project is these mowers. So the decks on these things, you can't get a chute blocker. And I'll show you why. Give me a second here. I'll show you why. Flip you around. So you can't get any kind of a chute blocker for these. And that's why. Because of the way that hole is shaped. Right? So your excuse me. Your advanced chute blocker isn't going to fit. Because it's designed to have a flat surface. So if you were to install something like that, the top of that is just going to be blowing grass everywhere. Right? So, plus it's round, you know, there. So I had bought this, the mulcher for it. And by the way, sucks. But I am going to have got a set of 2 different sets of hinges here. This is actually handlebar off of an old push mower. And I am going to copy the Easy Chute. And we're going to mount that on there. And we're going to have essentially a chute blocker by using that and attaching a hinge to it, attaching that to it, and we'll be able to pick up on that bar and push down, and it should flip it down to be able to cover that. So that's next project, is working on that. And I'm also going to be pulling the deck off of this and modifying the deck to put Zerk fittings in the spindles there. And we're going to be coating the bottom of that with some Rhino line just to help make it more durable. So with that said, definitely subscribe to the channel, because I have some pretty cool modifications coming up. And with that said, I do appreciate you guys clicking on the video. I'm trying to grow this channel. Like I said, I own a lawn care business, and 20% of my working is modifying stuff. I started from the ground up, so I started out with just really bad equipment, and you know, so I'm hoping I can be able to push and share some of what I've learned with you guys, and hopefully to inspire you to start your own business, because anybody can do it. And if you would like, I can actually make some videos on what to expect, things to do. Because like I said, I started out with nothing, man. And my first year, it was bad. It was real bad. So I can make some videos on that. But I appreciate you watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.